protect PII and how does it affect the mission of the organization? So one of the things that you have to do in the PII or PIA sense, you need to look at PII in your contractor community as well. How does that feed and populate the mission of the organization? So right now, the outpacing an organization's ability to protect, I dare say that there's probably very many organizations that are actually protecting information effectively. Why? Because the technology is moving faster than the policy. Technology is moving faster than we can keep up with it. So it's something that we have to stay on top of. So where does this lead us to? I'm going to put a term out there. We need to develop a culture of caring. That's something I want you all to think about. A culture of caring. Get away from the checklist mentality. Now that's a little nuance in the sense that in the government sense, everybody's in a hurry to hit the checklist because we have regulatory things, we're all understaffed, things like that. But we got to get away from that mentality. Think more holistically, start seeing where the data's coming, the possibilities of what if, and see the art of possibilities of technology. And start to think about how do we move beyond the checklist mentality and start seeing people as individuals. For the government organizations, there's a loss of trust. There's a data breach. There's a loss of credibility and a loss of confidence. For private organizations, there's penalties and a loss of reputation, all of which can be financial in sense. So I just put these out here as some ideas. Let's see if I can change this. So some thoughts here just kind of stimulate some brain cell activity among myself. But basically, data goes beyond the organization's boundaries. We need to recognize that and understand that. And we've already talked a little bit about the social media and what's going on, and DHS has taken a lead in doing a lot of those type of concerns and issues. DOD looked at that a couple years ago about the tweets and the social media and how do we protect the data, not just the classified data, but the sensitive information as well in the PII. We have to embrace new technologies. We have to understand them. It's no longer good to say, thou shalt not use this. Folks, it's already jumped over you. So people are using it. Now what are we doing about it? So we need to be aware of that and understand that. And look at the wireless and the wired and the web technologies. Look at each one of them. How are our staffs and the people within our agencies using these technologies, and what can we do to protect PII in that process? We need to start looking not just on the disposition of the data inside the agency, but how was that data collected? What's the source of that data? Where is it going? Where is it transmitted? How is it transmitted? How do we protect that? The data acquisition, the collection, the transmission, the use of it, the actual use of it. Where's that going? And deploy the privacy monitoring capabilities. Beyond security monitoring, get to privacy monitoring. There are technologies out there that are looking at privacy. And we need a cultural transformation. I've already mentioned that. The idea is get beyond mere compliance and start getting into a culture of caring. Take a holistic perspective toward PII and create that reputation of integrity and protecting people's data and accountability. Real briefly, this is kind of some high-level thoughts, and what we did, I based this around a 2010 Accenture study. There was 15,000 participants in this study globally, and 5,500 of our clients, basically, business clients, government and commercial. And there's some key findings that came out of this. About 70% of the people agreed, or the companies, organizations, government and private, by the way, 70% agreed to protect PII, that it was important. However, less than 50% actually did anything about it. They said it's important, but less than half of the organizations actually put that as a top priority, to place privacy as a priority. I thought that was really significant. The majority of organizations lost PII data, and due to internal issues, primarily systems. A lot of systems and employee theft. there was two big problems, and it came back to either internal systems or internal management. Internal processes were poor, and actually employee theft of some data. Although 70% report monitoring of requirements for compliance purposes, only 58% has ever had or 58% really thought that it was just compliance was insufficient. So they recognize that they're worried about it just to hit the check mark, but they're really not doing much about it at all. Over 50% of the outsource, these organizations outsource the collection of the PII data. Over 50% outsource it. In some states, they actually allow inmates and prisoners to collect information. So you have to start looking at your vendor source, your outsourcing of where that money, where that PII is coming from, and how do they protect that information. 31% of the organizations that were surveyed did not have a data breach, a reported data breach. Only 31%, which I thought was kind of interesting. And of those 31%, they did have a culture of caring, and they did allow for a very broad interpretation of privacy. So it allowed the people, the culture of the organization, to think, what if? Not a checklist, but what if? So, bottom line, summary slide here. Develop a culture of caring. We need to start seeing people as individuals and understanding the citizenry's concerns around this. We need to start creating standards for data understanding. What is a common understanding of data and how is it moved, how is it used, and what's its disposition? We need to transcend borders. We need to think larger than just our agency and talk about the interconnectivity with other agencies and other outside organizations such as your contractor community. We need to take that holistic focus in protecting and considering the life cycle of data. Start talking to your IT colleagues about the life cycle of the data. They've already have a life cycle data. The Federal CIO Council has established it. We need to fit into that, we in the privacy community. Some other practices to consider: assign accountability and oversight. These are all good. We have ITIL and COBIT, and now we have a privacy framework. How do we deconflict those? We need to make sure they're all tied together. We need to evaluate the control mechanisms for proper protection. Workforce awareness, that goes without saying. Examine the privacy protection of people, process, and techniques. Not just technologies, but techniques of how it's done. And review the business partners' PII controls and contracts and develop an instant response capability. We have it in policy. Well, what's the reality? Is the PII, is the privacy team closely tied to the security operations centers of an agency to start reporting those incidents? Thank you so much. I think we'll take questions now, right? Okay.
That's okay. We can do a few minutes of questions.
Thanks. I thought of this question while Jonathan was speaking, so maybe I'll post it towards him. My name is Paul Christam with Small Business Administration, and a lot of agencies now are planning to waive their persistent cookies policy, and I know the CIO Council is thinking about a new version of that. And I just wondered if you could comment on the implications of that for privacy and what CPOs should be thinking about when they get these waivers.
Well, I mean, I'll be happy to talk about it. I mean, like everything, a cookie is a type of technology. I mean, persistent tracking technologies, cookies, whatever, they're a type of technology. So in and of itself, no piece of technology is inherently wrong. It's how you use it, what you're doing with it, and what you're telling people you're doing with it, and making sure that what you're doing with it lines up with it. So, you know, one of the things